Morning everybody. Strange surroundings. You might have to help me out today, we're in a different place, so if I don't spot you, please wave harder. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning Committee. My name is Councillor Sue Craig, I'm Chair of the Committee. Please can I remind everyone to switch their phones and any other gadgets that make a noise off, please. The meeting is being filmed and the recording will be available on the Council's website. Anybody speaking that does not wish to be filmed should make themselves known to the camera operator who's behind me here. Item 1, emergency evacuation procedure. I'll just ask the Democratic Services Officer, Karina, to read out the procedure for us.
Thank you, Chair. If the continuous alarm sounds, you must evacuate the building and proceed to the assembly point. From this room, you follow the green running person signs to the exit using either the marble staircase or the main staircase. Please do not use the lifts. The assembly point for this building is in Orange Grove on the green outside grounds.
Thank you, Karina. And do you have any apologies for absence and substitutions, please?
Yes, apologies from Councillor Paul Crossley and Councillor Ruth Malloy is substituting.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest from anybody? No? Good. Thank you. There's no urgent business from the Chair, so again I'll turn to Karina if she could inform us of the public speaking procedure today.
Thank you, Chair. Speakers will be called to speak immediately after the case officer has made their presentation about the application. The order of speakers and the time allowed for speaking will be as follows. 1, if any Parish Town Council representatives will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes in total. Objectors to an application will be allowed 3 minutes in total. Supporters of an application will be allowed 3 minutes in total. Ward councillors not on the committee who have indicated that they wish to speak about an application may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes. We don't have our traffic light system here today, so I'm going to time the speakers, and I'll let you know when you've got 1 minute left. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Items from the public, no, done that one. 6 minutes. Everybody have the minutes? Do you have any comments, or can I have someone to close there? Okay. Councillor Jackson? And Councillor Davis to second. Thank you. I'll sign those in a moment. We didn't have any site visits last time, so we can move straight to the main plans list. We just had one item today, former Purnell factory in Poulton. If I could ask the case officer to present his report when he's ready, please. Sorry, just for those watching, someone was just asking about the fact it's a bit murky in here, a bit dark, but we need to keep the blinds closed so we can see the screen.
Good morning, everybody. Just checking, can you hear me okay? These microphones are a bit unusual. Apologies, It's the setup is just a bit unusual. I think we're familiar with the application which we're here to determine this morning. The application relates to a site at Oxley's Way in Poulton. It's the former Purnell Printworks site, which is located on Oxley's Way and Caxton Close. You can see Oxley's Way runs to the south of the site there, and Caxton Close runs to the east of the site. In this plan you can see that the area surrounding the site is not fully developed yet. Caxton Close comprises 2-storey houses which have just recently been constructed and completed and occupied by residents. Oxley's Way is under construction at the present time and is going to be 3-storey buildings which will also be houses, but they're in the process of being built at the minute. Some surrounding context to the site. The site is in the centre of this plan here. It's the area of bare earth that can be seen. The surrounding Printworks estate is located to the south and the eastern side, so that's the new build former Printworks site. You can see Hallitrow Road running to the west, which runs to the A39 and A37 eventually. And then you've got Poulton High Street to the southeastern side of the site. This is an image on the site, or looking towards the southern part of the site. So you've got Oxley's Way in the foreground there, and those 3-storey houses that are being built at the minute. They were granted planning permission in 2015, and then the site is beyond that there. This photo was taken in May last year, so development has progressed a bit since then, so those houses are now more complete than they were at this point. That's a similar image looking at the site from the south. There is a footpath that's got planning permission to run down the hillside here between these two sets of houses. You can see High Littleton in the distance there to the north. This is on the western side of the site, looking across the site as it is at present. You can see the wider Printworks estate to the right-hand side of that image, and then in the distance that's Caxton Close there on the eastern side of the site. And this is looking sort of northwards on the left-hand side, and in the centre of the image you can see a hedgerow and tree line, which is the only feature of ecological or biodiversity value on the site at the minute. This is beyond the northern boundary of the site. This is an area of public open space that's known as Oxley's. This was secured as part of the Section 106 agreement for the development of the wider estate. And this is Caxton Close itself, so looking southwards from the northern part of the site down Caxton Close, and you can see some of those houses on the left-hand side of the image that have just been occupied. And this is part of the wider Printworks estate, and we're looking north. The site is actually in the centre of this image, but is at lower level than where this image is taken from, sort of in the valley there, and you've got High Littleton in the distance beyond the site. So the wider Printworks site was given planning permission in 2010. The planning application itself was actually submitted in 2007. It's an outline planning permission, which gave permission for 421 dwellings, 2,400 square metres of office space, some light industrial units, a continuing care retirement community, a public house, restaurant, community building with nursery and police station, as well as open space and allotments. The community care retirement, the continuing care retirement community would have been located on the development site itself, so the site that we're considering this afternoon. That use would have included buildings up to 16,700 square metres in area, which would have hosted 210 beds of hybrid retirement living combined with residential care use. That use was marketed following gaining planning permission in 2010, so it's been marketed for an extended period over the last 10 or so years, but it hasn't been successful in gaining any interest from the development market or care providers, and it hasn't been constructed. The council hasn't received any applications for reserved matters on that outline permission, and the site remains vacant as we've seen. So that outline permission was considered under the 2007 local plan. However, this local plan has now been replaced by the local plan partial update, which was adopted by the council in January. This site that we're considering this afternoon is subject to a specific policy in the new local plan, which is policy SSV 22. That policy states that there are identified to be 5 parcels of land within the wider Printwork site that remain undeveloped. These parcels are referenced on the concept diagram, which we can see on the right-hand side of the image before us. They're referred to as parcels LP1 to LP5. LP1 is the site itself. In relation to LP1, land parcel 1, the policy states that an opportunity has arisen for land parcel 1 to provide development of circa 70 affordable dwellings within the area. It states that in order to progress this, an existing deficiency of early years places in Poulton must be addressed. As such, provision of an early years facility is required as part of this allocation, not only to meet the needs of existing occupiers in the area, but also to meet the needs of any new dwellings. So I can update the committee that planning permission for a nursery was granted on land parcel 3, LP3, in December 2022, and since that point the landowner of that site has signed a legal agreement which commits to construction and operation of that nursery within the next 2 years. So before April 2025, they will construct and operate that nursery. The site allocation policy SSV 22 also includes land parcels 4 and land parcels 5, which are allocated for light industrial floor space to compensate for loss of industrial and employment uses on the site. So turning to the proposed development itself, the application seeks planning permission for a total of 72 homes. 25 of these will be 3-bedroom homes, 29 of them will be 2-bedroom homes, and 18 of them will be 1-bedroom flats. The scheme will include a 30% affordable housing contribution. The houses that are proposed are 2-storey houses with pitched roofs constructed from a combination of stone and render. The development includes proposed planting and landscaping. A total of 40 trees will be planted on site, which will achieve a minimum 10% biodiversity net gain. There's a total of 126 parking spaces within driveways proposed within the scheme, and then there will also be 9 visitor parking spaces on site as well. Each house will have 2 cycle parking spaces within the gardens, and in terms of renewable energy, the houses will utilise air source heat pumps for heating and hot water, and will include solar panels for electricity. And these technologies, along with the wider construction of the buildings, will achieve a 100% carbon emission reduction in comparison to energy use. So this is the general site layout of the development. You can see the houses align with Oxley's Way to the south of the site, and then you've got driveways to the front of them, and then you've got rows of tree planting running along Oxley's Way there. The site has been pulled back from the hedgerow and tree line at the northern side, so there's a minimum of a 10-metre buffer between any development and that existing hedgerow and tree line on the northern side of the site. At the eastern side of the site, facing Caxton Close, an area of landscaping and open space has been integrated within the scheme, which is a requirement of the SSV 22 policy. As you can see, it's going to be seeded with grass and include a variety of tree planting in that location as well. So these are the proposed elevations of the housing. You can see that the houses are all 2 stories with pitched roofs with some gables at the corner units. And the materials would include a mixture of stone and render to provide some variety within the scheme. So since the committee previously considered this application on the 8th of February, the Council has made quite a lot of progress in relation to the issues that were discussed at that meeting. The reasons for deferring that application on the 8th of February was due to lack of certainty surrounding delivery of the off-site roundabout, which is part of the 2010 permission, and also the nursery facility, which is on LP3, the land parcel to the south of the site. And then members also raised concerns in relation to compliance with the new local plan partial update sustainability policies. So since that meeting in February, in relation to the roundabout, the relevant landowners have worked with the Council at length to agree the necessary documentation, contract and bond required to secure delivery of that roundabout, and these documents were successfully completed yesterday. So they've been finalised, and the Council has now specified that there is sufficient safeguards in place to ensure that these works will be undertaken, and the Council has secured the necessary bond to ensure that if the developer doesn't undertake the works, the Council can undertake the works themselves. As a result of that, the local highway authority is therefore no longer seeking any Section 106 or planning conditions to secure delivery of the roundabout, as this is no longer necessary. And the Highways Authority have confirmed that they are now satisfied that this work will be undertaken, providing the necessary secondary means of access to be used by construction traffic to build the proposed development, but also to provide, importantly, a secondary access for residents to the estate and resolve some of the highways issues that are currently existing in the area. In relation to the nursery, the landowner for the nursery site has, since the previous committee meeting, signed a legal agreement committing to construction and operation of the nursery within a 2-year period, so that would be before April 2025. That legal agreement provides an updated mechanism beyond the 2010 Section 106 agreement, which will ensure that the nursery will be constructed in a timely manner, ready for occupation and use by residents of the proposed housing and other residents within the area. The local planning authority and its solicitors have been involved extensively in preparation of this agreement and are satisfied that this agreement will be effective and can be enforced through injunction and the courts should it be breached at any later date. The local planning authority and the education services team are satisfied that this will ensure that sufficient childcare is available in the area to meet the needs of the proposed housing. Also, since the previous committee meeting, the applicant has revised the development in relation to their sustainable construction proposals. So the houses that are proposed have been improved in relation to their energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies. The houses will now include triple glazed windows, improved air tightness, air source heat pumps instead of gas boilers to provide all heating and hot water, as well as increased levels of solar panels for electricity generation. These technologies will ensure that the development fully offsets its carbon emissions associated with predicted energy use. It will therefore achieve zero operational emissions in accordance with the Local Plan Partial Update Policy SCR6. The applicant has also supplied an embodied carbon assessment for the development that shows that the development can be constructed achieving a embodied carbon level of 493 tonnes of CO2 per square metre. This is significantly below the 900 tonne CO2 square metre requirement in policy SCR8 of the Local Plan Partial Update. So officers are now satisfied that the scheme complies with the recently adopted Local Plan Partial Update policies in respect of sustainable construction. As a result of all those facts, the officer's recommendation is that the authority is delegated to officers to permit the development following drafting of a Section 106 agreement for the obligations which are listed before us. They're stated within the committee report as well as the planning conditions which are recommended within the committee report. That concludes the officer's presentation. Thank you for listening. Happy to take any questions after the public forum. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. We have two speakers on this one. If I could ask Dan Trundle first, please.
Thank you for your time today. I am the agent speaking on behalf of the applicant, Live West, the registered provider of affordable housing. At the February committee, two of the items related to legally securing the roundabout and a new nursery facility to the extent which would enable officers to recommend approval of Grampian conditions on this removal. Previously, these Grampians had presented Live West with a problem because they had no control over delivery of these items. Live West has been liaising with the landowner for the site and is pleased to hear that a new unilateral undertaking has been entered into which secures delivery of the nursery facility granted permission in December. Live West also understands that the Section 278 Highways Agreement for delivery of the roundabout is now signed after significant efforts from both officers of the council and the landowner. It is understood that the roundabout's works will start within weeks and be completed within 6 months. This recent progress enables the Grampian conditions to be removed and this affordable housing scheme to move forward with certainty. Another matter raised at the last committee was that of energy efficiency. When the application was made in April 2022, it was accompanied by an energy assessment which demonstrated full compliance with the adopted policy at that time. CP2 and SCR1 required a 19% reduction in regulated carbon emissions, with 10% coming from renewables. The positive officer recommendation in February was on the basis of the energy policies at that time. However, after hearing the discussion at the last committee, Live West have undertaken a comprehensive review of the scheme and have now made the commitment to go beyond the officer recommendation and achieve the newly adopted policy target set by SCR 6. This scheme will therefore be completely free from gas boilers. Every home will be powered by solar panels. They will all benefit from a dedicated air source heat pump and will be fitted with an electric vehicle charging point. Taking this into account, the revised energy assessment demonstrates that the scheme will achieve zero operational emissions. For context, the future home standard being introduced in 2025 will require 75 to 80% reduction to help Britain get net zero ready. This scheme achieves 100% and net zero right now. Furthermore, embodied carbon is minimised and the scheme achieves a score of 493, going much further than the policy SCR 8 target of 900. To conclude, we hope that members recognise the commitment from both sides to progress the wider infrastructure delivery. This will enable this Homes England grant-funded affordable housing scheme to come forward with certainty on this allocated brownfield site, which has been vacant for a sustained period of time. We hope that members also value the significant achievements made on energy efficiency, which will see the scheme deliver net zero affordable homes for Poulton and would be one of the first housing schemes to come forward under the newly adopted policy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And our second and final speaker is the local ward member, Councillor Hardman. Yes, please do, because it's better if you're facing the committee.
I prefer to speak to your face as well.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak today. And committee members, a month ago, you voted to defer this application because you wanted more detail on off-site highways, early years nursery and sustainable construction. Many thanks for doing this, as all three have now been resolved. At last, the developer has been pinned down and is now committed to building the roundabout and preschool community building. The roundabout was part of the original master plan in 2010, secured by an S106 agreement, which never happened. An agreement yesterday, I believe, has now been signed. We've been told it's been signed. Otherwise, the commencement of this development would not have been allowed. Also, an agreement is now in place committing the landowner to a legal agreement to construct the preschool nursery within 2 years. These outstanding issues have now been resolved after a very long time, so thank you. Just to remind you, the original development at Penrose Plant Works was to be of mixed use, made up of offices, industrial units, a pub restaurant, a community building and, of course, a continuing care retirement community, providing jobs as well as housing. This site, for the 72 new homes, as I've said, was planned for a continuing care retirement community, an excellent concept where older people would be looked after. Evidence in this report shows that the site was marketed, but we were told there is no demand for such elderly provision. However, the West of England Local Housing Needs Assessment dated September 2021 states there was a shortfall of 1,783 specialist homes for elderly people in Baines in 2020, with a projected additional need of 1,270 homes between 2020 and 2035. This report also highlights problems with green infrastructure where there is a shortage. There's a problem with many of the footpaths with gradients too steep to be used for walking. I think you saw that in some of the photos. For example, the buffer area to the north and west of the site has been planned with a gradient of 1.2, rendering the area unfit to walk on. We are told in the report that the footpaths will not be publicly adopted. They will either be looked after by the developer or not at all. So what exactly does this mean? Will some of the footpaths be left to fend for themselves, so to speak? Because of the shortage of green space, a condition has been put in place to pay £76,680 towards creating extra green spaces and facilities off-site. If this development does go ahead, do we know who's going to contribute to fulfilling this financial condition? And please, can you set a time period in which the condition will be met? We don't have to wait another 12 years for this to happen. So to conclude, Porton residents are unanimously against this application for 72 new homes. They're not NIMBYs, having accepted over 600 new homes in the past 10 years. The population of Porton has also risen by at least over 1,000 people. This is quite a considerable number of new people moving into the area. These 72 new homes will put an extra strain on an infrastructure already under stress. Over 100 cars will be added to the congestion on our roads, especially at peak times. And David McFadden, planner, has already alleged 2 highway issues, of which there are many. Elm House surgery may be taking in more patients. However, it's now going to take more than 3 weeks to get an appointment. Porton, like many other areas, is a dental desert with long waiting lists at a dental surgery, so no hope for newcomers there. Secondary schools will be full in a few years' time, with children having to be sent elsewhere. A precedent was set with a refusal, to permit outline planning permission for 74 homes on this site in 2017. The reasons given for refusal, it was not part of a mixed-use scheme and failed to promote employment opportunities. What has changed is that this housing development is now part of the local plan partial update. It seems we've got a roundabout and nursery, but at the expense of 72 new homes. For all of the reasons I have outlined, I'd like you to look again at this application. Many thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hardman. That's the end of our speakers. So can I invite members to ask questions? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. I'm very interested in this question of the nursery, which has now been agreed on with a third party, as I understand it. So given the position of very many nursery operatives at the moment, with the rising costs of fuel, the shortage of trained workers, and just simply building a nursery is going to cost more than it did when this original application came in. I wondered if there was any sort of plan B or any kind of provision, any way of guaranteeing that there is going to be a nursery here, because what we really do not want is a nursery to start up and then fail. So first of all, what precautions have been taken to guarantee that there will be a nursery available? And secondly, I'm rather surprised that the calculations given are for the children on this or perhaps it's extended mentally to include all the new residents on the Parnell site, both the ones moving into the houses that are just completed and the ones that would be to come. We are grossly underprovided with nursery places in Westfield. We have 2 small nurseries for 4,000 adults, children. I mean, I don't know how many preschool children we've got, but we've only got 2 small nurseries, and so that of course creates a backwash. Is it going to be possible for this nursery to take the overflow from other areas in the Soma Valley where there's an under-provision? So if we could have some clarification on the nursery, that would be very helpful, Chair.
Okay, so starting with the legal agreement and what it requires, the legal agreement has been agreed within the context of the previous planning permission, which is the outline permission granted in 2010. There was a legal agreement with that planning permission that required delivery of the nursery, and what has now been agreed is a sort of streamlined version of that 2010 agreement that requires construction and operation of the nursery by April 2025. So that's a legal obligation which the owner of that land and any successor has given the council to say that they will construct the nursery by that point in time. In terms of ongoing operation of the nursery, as you've identified, there is a shortage of nursery accommodation or places in the area, so I think our perspective would be that the nursery has a great market to operate within, but there's not any sort of safeguards within that legal agreement relating to failure of the nursery. That would be a situation that we deal with when it came to it, and is somewhat outside the planning system as well, in terms of requiring developments to sort of keep uses operating in perpetuity. That's something that planning would struggle to secure. In terms of the capacity of the nursery, it's a 48-place nursery, which the Education Services team have told ourselves that that's enough capacity to serve Poulton itself and resolve the existing deficit in the area, and also account for the development proposed under this application. So the 72 houses, the mix of houses is a variety of, there's some 1-bedroom flats in there, 2-bedroom houses and 3-bedroom houses, so they're not all family sized units. But yeah, the Education Services team have confirmed that they're satisfied that there would be enough capacity from that nursery to meet local need. I don't think it would serve any wider catchment though, unfortunately.
Okay, Councillor Jackson.
Well, I'm a bit... Obviously, people with small children, very small children, have priority on the Home Search Register, and the occupants of these new houses will have come via the Home Search system. So therefore, it's reasonable to assume that you will probably have a higher number of small children in this settlement, if I dare use that word, than you would have in the population generally. I'm quite surprised that it's not being shown as a benefit for the wider Poulton community, which Councillor Hardman has so eloquently described, that there would be some surplus places. Turning it round the other way, of course, teenagers, I see there's a condition for a contribution to youth services. But since this application was originally designed, we don't operate. There's a separate charity providing youth services in Poulton. Would this contribution be going to the Youth South West Youth Charitable Youth Service? instead of to the council, I mean.
Just to clarify, which contribution are you referring to?
I'm afraid I haven't managed to go through and get it all summarised, but there was a contribution for youth services listed among the conditions, and I'm just asking you, where's it going?
So the 2010 permission did include a financial contribution towards youth services in the area. That has been paid. It was paid quite a number of years ago, and that will have been distributed. And that contribution took account of the whole estate as it was proposed in 2010. There's no further contribution towards youth services sought under this application.
Sorry, can I have one more question? Where are the allotments going to be?
I believe the allotments are also part of the 2010 permission, so they're not part of this planning application. I don't know the latest status of delivery of those allotments, but they are a requirement part of the 2010 permission.
You haven't got your mic on if you're speaking.
I am convinced that I saw listed in the benefits green spaces and allotments that on one of your slides.
There's a financial contribution to public space and public open space enhancement, but there's no allotments that form part of this application. There were allotments in the 2010 permission for the wider estate.
Okay.
So will there be allotments available for the residents?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what the latest status is of delivery of those allotments, but they have been given permission as part of the 2010 permission and are secured as part of the 2010 permission Section 106 agreement. I would suggest you probably would be best placed to follow that up with the planning enforcement team to see what the latest is on delivery of those allotments that are part of the wider estate planning permission.
Thank you. Obviously, we're only here to consider what's in front of us today with this application. So, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Two questions, if I may. The first one, just to follow on from Eleanor's question about the nursery. I'm just trying to understand whether we've replaced the Grampian condition with a legal agreement. So I'm just trying to understand the advantage of doing that. So I'm assuming we're doing that because it increases the likelihood that the nursery is going to be delivered within a timescale that's been agreed. So what are the penalties within this legal agreement if it's not delivered within that time frame?
So yeah, you're correct. That legal agreement stands alone effectively. So irrespective of what happens to this application today, that agreement has been signed and provided. So the nursery, the landowner has committed to delivery of the nursery, and that's something that you can take into account in this planning permission or decide in this planning application today. That is now the case. You can take it that legal agreement has been entered into and must be met. In terms of penalties, if the landowner was not to meet the terms of the agreement, that would be something that the council would need to consider from an enforcement perspective at a later date. The options for enforcement of non-compliance with a planning obligation would be injunction and taking the landowner to court. So legal action and enforcement, but it would only be the case once the actual agreement was breached.
Okay, I was just trying to establish if the legal agreement has any teeth, that was all. But I guess that's a legal question that we're not going to look at today. So my second question then is regarding the affordable homes. So at the previous application, we were given two scenarios depending on whether there was grant funding available or not. So it ranged from a 30% affordable option to a 100% affordable option. So in the presentation, what we're seeing now is a minimum of 30%, but a possibility of 100% if the grant funding happens. So how confident are we that the 100% affordable is going to be achieved through the grant funding? Or is it? Are we only today? Are you only asking us today to consider a figure of 30%?
So the affordable housing offer, that's the obligation that's presented is a 30% contribution to affordable housing that may increase to 100% with grant funding, as you suggest. I believe that grant funding is still available. I believe that's the latest case, but that's something that would be established following the grant of planning permission.
So, okay, so to be clear then, today we can only consider a 30%. There is no guarantee of the 100%, so is that correct?
So the key thing about the scheme is that the affordable housing offer complies with the requirements of local policy, which is a 30% contribution. So the applicant has offered a 30% contribution, and therefore it's policy compliant. And even if it were to be 100% at a later date, it would still be policy compliant.
Yeah. My understanding is that currently we're only running at about 20% on this site. I think these are your figures. So it would need to go to 100% to bring us up to the 30% overall for this development.
So you're confusing the full estate with this single application. We're only determining this application here today, and it's 30% of this application that would be affordable housing.
Actually, I'm not confusing anything. I'm just saying that the overall site is currently running at 20% affordable houses, and for that overall site that was agreed in 2010 to reach 30%, this site would have to go to 100%. Is that correct?
So yeah, that would be a sort of benefit of 100% scenario, that the overall scheme would reach that, the overall Printworks site would reach that 30%, but that's not that isn't part of this application that we're deciding today.
Okay, Councillor Bromley had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. It's very detailed, very interesting. It's just a question. Looking back to the, I know this isn't part of this particular application, but 2010 outline planning application, included provision for restaurant, pub, community space, and I know we've had these discussions before about these extended housing developments where one's approved and another's approved maybe 2 years later, and there's never any community space, and I just wondered, in total how many houses are there going to be there without this provision, and how far is this from Poulton? If people want to sort of go into Poulton and go to a pub, for example, or cafe or whatever.
So the site is within Poulton itself, and Poulton is a relatively small community, so it is walkable. The high street is 5 minutes walk from the site, so the residents would have access to the facilities within the existing village. I think from a planning perspective, it's unfortunate that the mixed-use development that was originally foreseen hasn't come forward. That was clearly the vision for the site, and it's regrettable that those uses have not emerged, but those uses ultimately have to be viable, and unfortunately that's dictated by market forces, and they haven't been taken on in this instance. And we're faced with a situation where we've got a vacant site, real pressures on housing delivery, real severe need for affordable housing in the district. And in that context, this has seemed to provide a good alternative and hopefully a viable alternative that will be built out, whereas those previous uses, unfortunately, were not considered viable.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Councillor McPhee?
How do you respond to the Speaker's note that the treatment of footpaths is not satisfactory in the sense that there's very steep ground and it's not going to be clear who's going to look after those? Do you consider yourself beholden, as it were, to include something about the construction and maintenance of footpaths?
I believe that all footpaths did meet the gradient requirements of the local highways authority, so they're not excessively steep. They meet the council's expected standards, but they wouldn't be adopted highways. That's correct. It would be privately maintained by the landowner, and there is a condition which is part of the recommendation, which would secure details of a maintenance programme for all the landscaped areas on the site. So that would include the soft landscaped areas, but also the hard landscaped areas, including footpaths.
So if they didn't look after the footpaths, there would be...
Is your mic on?
Yeah, mine's not very close. I'll move over. So if they didn't look after the footpath, there would be something for the residents to be able to, coerce them.
So it would be secured as part of the planning condition in relation to the maintenance plan. If they weren't maintained in accordance with the maintenance plan, they would be in breach of that planning condition, and it could be an enforcement matter that the council could look into at that date.
Right.
We would obviously consider the maintenance plan in detail to ensure that it had sufficient information in relation to maintenance to be acceptable.
Yeah. One more. In your early slide, I don't know if we can go back to it, we look at where you were showing the different planning areas. There was a statement that there were, in the original application, it was expected that 80 homes would be built on LP1 and LP2, and you're building, or you're allowing a building of 72 in LP1, so therefore you're only expecting to have 8 on LP2. Is that correct?
So this is the policy in the local plan partial update relating to the Printworks site as a whole, as it stands today. We're looking at LP1 today, so you're correct. It's the 72 houses on LP1. 8 houses on LP2 have been given planning permission with the nursery development in December last year. So we have agreed a scheme for 8 houses on that site.
Councillor Malloy?
Thank you. Yes, it's just a small question really, but interests me about the bicycle storage, and that there will be 2 parking spaces per dwelling. And looking in the notes, it will be covered and secure, so that was one of my questions about that. But then I see it says here, the bicycle storage shall be retained permanently thereafter, unless otherwise agreed in writing by the local planning authority. So does that mean, so it's a question, does that mean that if somebody, for whatever reason, decided they wanted more space in their garden and wanted to remove the bicycle storage, that they would have to apply for planning permission to do that? Thank you. And my other question was going to be about paths, but Councillor McPhee's already asked that one.
The planning condition would require variation in order for cycle parking to be removed. So the council would consider that on a case-by-case basis, but obviously, we have policies and SPDs in relation to cycle parking, and active travel is a major priority for the council. So it wouldn't be something that we would be typically looking to support, but it would be considered on a case-by-case basis when it came forward.
Yeah, so I was just wondering what would happen if would that be then, if somebody went ahead and did that without having permission, it would be enforceable then? Just thinking ahead about, things that do happen without permission.
Correct, yeah. The condition requires maintenance of the cycle parking as approved in perpetuity, so the expectation would be that cycle parking is preserved solely for the purposes of parking bikes in perpetuity.
Okay, all questions done? Oh, have you got a question, Councillor Hodge?
Yes, just one small question. Yes, thank you very much for a very good, well-written report and comprehensive presentation. Thank you. Just got one about the deficit in green space and the 76,000 contribution to existing green spaces, and it's going towards, so in correspondence to Portland Parish Council, it's going towards the one open space and an existing recreational park, and I just wondered how nearby are those to the development, because there doesn't seem to be anywhere to put. I mean, obviously there's a woodland and a boundary around the site, but how far is it to a play park for that development? How far away are these existing recreational parks?
So Oxley's open space, which is the open space just to the north of the site, is very nearby. It doesn't include any play facilities in that particular park. The nearest play facilities are in the parks that are referenced. The financial contribution was sought to upgrade those facilities. They are walkable from the site, but they're not immediately adjacent. So they're within Poulton, but they're 10 minutes walk, say, from the sites. There is some open space that was also permitted adjacent to the nursery as well within the nursery development, and we accounted for that when coming to the figure for the financial contribution which is being sought. And it would be down to the parish council as to how they wish to spend that money within the parks. In there.
And just one other question on the parking spaces and a slight small shortage in visitor parking. The existing, if one wanted to park on the roads in front of the houses, is that possible? Are the parking spaces only exactly those that are allocated, or is there any extra parking? So are the roads wide enough to take any parked cars, or is it really exactly those parking spaces that are available? I'm thinking of another development in my ward where it's a big development and the roads are too narrow to park a car on, so you really could not, unless you park. And what has happened is lots of cars are half on and half off the pavements.
Yeah, so part of the application is a traffic regulation order for highways weighting restrictions, which would be double yellow lines around the key junctions to protect those from parking. There is probably some capacity for informal parking within the development itself, but that would be at it's not allocated parking. So, but there is some on-street capacity that could be used as overflow if necessary.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You had another question, Councillor Jackson?
I've obviously got a bit confused between what the conditions were in the 2010 application and what still holds good now. Now, in the 2010 outline application, there was supposed to be employment facilities. I'd like to know, can you explain, under this proposal now, I can't see any employment opportunities. What is being done to mitigate that, or does the 2010 condition just fall away and we don't need to worry about loss of jobs at a what was it called, the support community for older people?
I think there is a recognition that loss of that historic use that had planning permission in 2010 will probably result in less employment on this site than was originally envisaged. But as I've said previously, that use was marketed extensively and hasn't been successful in finding an operator or developer that wishes to construct that use at this location. So the employment uses have been redistributed elsewhere on the site. So there's LP4 and LP5, those two smaller land parcels which are allocated for light industrial use. They're unlikely to be associated with the same level of employment as the original 2010 permission, but that's something that we have to weigh up and balance when considering the application today. I think given the marketing that's been undertaken and the fact that this use hasn't proved attractive to any developer or operator in the last 10 years, and we've got a site sitting vacant and a proposal for a policy-compliant affordable housing development on a brownfield site. The balance that officers have found is that it would weigh in favour of supporting this development despite there being a lower level of employment than was originally envisaged in the 2010 permission.
You got to follow on, Councillor Jackson.
Well, yes, because I've read the marketing report very carefully, and if I'm not mistaken, they actually haven't done anything very proactively since 2019 when the world changed with the COVID crisis and Brexit making it more difficult to get staff. It seems to sort of fade out. And meanwhile, because I stupidly put in my details for looking for somewhere in Portsmouth, I get showered with new developments in Wiltshire. So I'm, wondering why it is that these companies can build and manage and run retirement settlements in Wiltshire, but not here when it's so close to Bristol.
Not really sure what the question was there.
Sorry. Yeah, was that?
The question is that it doesn't seem to me that black box planning have been very active since 2019. I mean, they do diligently go through what they did before that date, but I couldn't see very much had been happening since then, when, of course, the world has got very challenging for providers. But it doesn't mention that either.
So, yeah, that is still a nine-year period of marketing, which is quite an extended period. Our adopted policy in relation to employment uses does not actually require any marketing of sites, but it provides a general statement that says that if sites don't find, if uses don't materialise, alternatives will be considered, and this quite a prolonged period to find an operator or a developer to bring this use forward, but it's been unsuccessful. They have provided quite a comprehensive list of developers that have been contacted and approached directly, and evidence of those direct approaches is included within the report. And yeah, I think the officer's view is that we were satisfied that a comprehensive marketing process had been undertaken. One of the key issues with the use is it's a very specialist use. It's not a care home. They're not suggesting that a care home wouldn't be attractive in this location. It's a very specialist use that had 210 residential flats alongside an element of care. We're seeing some of these developments in Bath. But we haven't seen, they're not things that we've typically seen much in rural areas. So I think the conclusion in the marketing report was that a developer or operator didn't find this attractive at this particular location. And we officers are accepting of that conclusion that's been presented. Members need to reach their own conclusion on that.
Thank you. I'd like to move to the debate. Have we got any more questions? One short one, Councillor Hughes.
I'll try and keep it short, I promise. Okay, so just one final question was, we've touched on this before, which is with the affordable and social houses, with the allocation, the method of allocation of these, and whether or not that allocation process, or whether it can be conditions that they're allocated to people with a local or strong local connection. We already have we have an issue with Mendip building on our doorstep in Midsummer Norton, and they're going to build 81 social and affordable houses there, but none of those are going to benefit anyone in Midsummer Norton or Poulton or Westfield. But it does bring more people in and put more pressure on our infrastructure. So with this development, assuming it's 30 or 100%, can we condition in any way that the houses are allocated to people with a strong local connection, rather than allowing more people into the area and putting more pressure on our already overburdened infrastructure?
That is an option that is available for members to consider if they find it valid. It would be something that would probably need to be included within a Section 106 agreement. As I mentioned yesterday, the Council's view on that, and the view of housing officers, is that requirement wouldn't be justified in this instance. The Council's policy for settlements of this size is to keep housing open to the full district, and therefore it would be allocated on the basis of the existing home search register and priority that is typically afforded. So that is the Council's position, but it's for members to consider whether or not they think that a different approach would be justified in this particular instance. For example, what is the difference with this particular development that requires it to be restricted just to local residents?
Okay, we can move to debate. We've been going for an hour. Everyone okay to keep going? You putting your hand up because you'd like a break or because you'd like to start the debate? Yeah. Okay, we're open the debate. Please go ahead, Councillor Hounsell.
Thank you. Right, firstly, like others, can I just thank the case officer for the presentation, both written and oral, and also congratulate the case officer for the substantial progress that's been made since the last time that we considered this, and also credit must go to the applicant for the changes as well. I'm slightly concerned at the suggestion about having a local connection, because I feel allocation should be based on need rather than, parochially where someone is now. I'm perfectly happy to propose a motion that we accept the officer recommendation, delegate to permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hounsell. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Davis?
I'm quite happy to second it, and like Councillor Hounsell said, there's been a lot of work put into this, and we've moved forward quite a bit from February. We need to remember this is policy compliant with what was the local plan partial update, and so some of the queries and questions that are raised have now been covered, if you like, in where we are with our policies at the moment, rather than where they were back in 2010, which is an awful long time ago now, and the thing has moved on. And I appreciate it's not employment, but it is in 2 other sites nearby on this overall development. And as someone who lives quite close to Horton, I'll be glad to see a roundabout there as you're going in. I am aware of the traffic issues there, because I also have to drive through Horton at times, and it is quite tricky, but I think this is a positive way forward, and I do appreciate that the schools are quite full around there. With the nursery allocation sorted out, the roundabout sorted out, and the development being sustainable, as Councillor Jackson said yesterday in the briefing,
and the transport buses-wise is improving again at the moment. Maybe this is more sustainable than perhaps it might have been back in February. So I think what we've got before us is a lot of hard work, which is actually, it was worth the deferral from February to today to see that we've got the different things clarified in a legal manner, and I'm more than happy to second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. So we have a motion on the table to support the officer's recommendation, proposed by Councillor Hounsell, seconded by Councillor Davis. We can continue with the debate. Councillor Jackson.
Sorry, Chair, I think I misunderstood your direction because I thought you were opening up a debate. Had I realised we were going to go straight into a resolution, I would have put one on the table rejecting the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Jackson, the debate opened and somebody can put forward a motion immediately if they choose to. That is within the rules, and that is what was just
Yeah, well, fine, I'm just saying I didn't understand.
Then
I would have proposed the opposite, and I'll now explain why, if I may.
Please do.
Firstly, I do not feel that putting a complete mini estate of affordable housing down in one spot is a very good idea. It does, I admit, go back to the last Labour government, the idea that social housing or affordable housing should be integrated into the main area. And this is going to be seen as the council estate with animus from the rest of the residents. And I believe this has already shown up in some of the objections, which are not, you've got to have an absolute policy. I'm not saying that people should be able to substantiate an objection on the grounds that they just don't want somebody off the housing register living next to them, because perfectly decent families are on that and the need is very great. There's no question about that. I just query whether it is right to have 72 dwellings all in one block, all in one location, all at the bottom of a steep house. And it's not, of course, the provider's responsibility at all that in two of my wards the social housing is marked out by the fact that the materials used for the properties which they manage is quite different from the main buildings that were bought to be sold off plan and so on. So I think this is most unfortunate to have a sort of unintegrated block like this with we've got the loss of the community facilities in the wider plan and the loss of commensurate employment. But I also have to declare an interest. I was 74 yesterday. I shall need this kind of accommodation that was originally proposed at some stage in the remainder of my life, I have no doubt, and I think to lose this is very unfortunate. These 64 beds have not materialised yet in Midsummer Norton, although there is a planning consent, but it hasn't actually been built yet, and we are very underbedded with people in the area having to find accommodation for their relatives in Oak Hill on the one side, Shepton Mallet, Bath. Distance is far greater than Poulton to Westfield Radstock area. So I really don't accept that premise. And also I think it's unfortunate that the reports have not been located in the wider context of bed blocking. We know that 27% of the beds in the RUH are occupied by people who could be discharged, but there is no suitable accommodation for them. And that, to me, says it all, that there should be accommodation provided. And, of course, we have seen the council now taking over, I think it's 5 homes in the Bath area for various reasons. Was the council not asked if they would develop this as a council institution? So those are the reasons why I will not be voting for this resolution.
Thank you. Just for clarity, I'm looking at the officer now, what we're approving here today is 30% affordable housing, whilst there is a possible benefit that it will go up to 100. It's actual 30% that we're approving today. Yeah?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
What we're approving today is 30% affordable housing. It may go up to 100, but what is in front of us is 30%.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Bromley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yes, with regard to Councillor Jackson's comment, I mean, we all know there's a great need for sheltered accommodation, and the previous application, obviously, they say there was marketing which didn't wasn't successful, and they didn't show a need. But I mean, I think obviously we have to look at the application in front of us now, and at the same time we have a great need for social housing, and this actually delivers that, and hopefully will be very useful in the wider area. And I think actually it's also encouraging. I think that the bus service actually now, from what I understand, is going to be better than it was back in February. I think it's 2 buses an hour or something. So I think at least that's encouraging. And thinking about the nursery accommodation, the nursery school, and nursery workers having to make their way there, I think that's going to be very, very useful. Obviously. I think the officers have done a very good job in satisfying a lot of the concerns that we all had 2.5 months ago, and in many ways I think it's a very good offer that we have now, and so I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Romney. Councillor McPhee.
Yes, I must admit that when I first came to the copy of the report, I was sceptical, but I thought the points that they made were very relevant, and in particular, the one was that many of these places are put into more affluent areas, and that was a pretty telling reason why, if you like, you get more in Wiltshire and not that one there. And just to finish up, I also commend the developer not only for the things that they've signed up to, but for the commitment to not have any gas. And what you've done there, I think, is a real step forward. So therefore, I will be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McPhee. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. So, I mean, firstly, I have to say I share Councillor Jackson's concerns about allocation of sites for social and affordable homes. I mean, speaking as someone that grew up on one of the largest council estates in the UK, if not Europe, I think it is vital that these are spread amongst the community, not in one location. I also think it's a real shame that overall this development has failed to deliver all of the aspects and all of the incentives that would have helped to make this a community rather than a housing estate. Things like community buildings and pubs and restaurants and even care homes, these are all things that would help to make it more of a community. So that side of things it's really sad that that's not happened. So I think I disagree with Councillor Housel on the method of allocation, but I think in this instance, our area, whether that's Poulton, Midsummer Norton area, we are struggling. Our infrastructure is struggling with the amount of people we currently have, and for these developments to bring more people into a heavily burdened situation is not a help for anyone. I mean, our doctor surgeries, our dentists are already full to capacity. So I think to help with that community, we have to allocate these sort of properties to people that are part of that existing community. So for me, that 106 agreement would be vital. But I'm very undecided on this development, very undecided.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hodge.
Sorry. So my thoughts on this are still coming together, and I with my colleagues, I'm sad at the loss of the elements that would have made it more of a community. But and again, I'm reflecting on a development, big development we have in Lansdowne, which is distant, a bit distant from the city, and the delivery of the shop and the elderly care home has really been crucial to it. But I'm probably going to take the officers' assurances that these things are all really 5 or 10 minutes away. I hope they are, the local shops and local pubs, and take those assurances. I feel really positive that this is that we deferred this and we've got a much better sustainable construction option, and it meets our aspirations, and it is going to be the first housing scheme coming forward with a net zero operational emissions, meeting that policy together with the 30% affordable. I think those are very positive. So reflecting on the concerns about the affordable all being located in one site if it went to 100, and in terms of figures, again, 30% affordable from 72 homes is about 20 homes. If it did go on to be 100%, it would be 72 affordable homes in one place. Reflecting on the site that I know of in my ward of 300 homes, that delivers 30% affordable. So we do have 100 homes in one location that are affordable on a development, and it does seem to work, actually, those 100 homes. It doesn't feel overwhelming, and so we would be creating a similar scenario, 20 out of 72, if it's 30%, maybe 72, on the edge of a bigger development that is delivering 20%. So there is mixture in that whole area. So that's where I'm answering that question for me. But one consideration, I support Councillor Hughes' local connection requests, and I wondered if there is any way we can delegate to have a combination of need prioritised with a local connection added in as a way of allocating. I don't know how officers would implement that, but whether it's possible to keep that in allocating affordable housing, delegate to add that in some way. Need obviously coming first, but a local connection being given weight.
Yes, it can, but it's not in the current motion, and I'll turn to Councillor Hounsell. I would gather from his remarks that he wouldn't include it, but maybe I've got that wrong.
Right. I don't particularly want to add it. I can understand the point being made, but it's so difficult to define as to the area that you select from, and I just feel that there may be families in desperate need that are perhaps might be described as trapped where they are now. Why can't they move to and become resident in this area instead? I think there's always a danger of being, too parochial, and I just don't think there's a need for it, for this extra condition, and I think it'd be very hard to apply, and I just don't want anything that dilutes the basis of the allocation to be on genuine need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hounsell. Yeah, thanks, understood. If, of course, committee members don't feel that that's right, then this motion will fail and another can be introduced. But thank you for that. Councillor Hodge, have you finished your comments? Do you have any more for the debate? Councillor Jackson?
As somebody who's been in the Housing and Economic Development Scrutiny Panel for some time, as I understand the Baines rules, and I believe they're laid down by the Secretary of State, you have to consider a local connection as the whole of the unitary authority. And there's no ways around that unless the settlement is less than, I think it's 1,300, which of course Poulton is much larger than 1,300. So it's really not possible. And were that condition, I don't think that condition could be sustained if it were attached to this motion for this reason. It could only be the case if somebody applied to the Home Search Register, said, my children are at Poulton Junior School, it's vital their education continues, and then they would get a point scoring that might enable them to get into a settlement here, or I'm the sole carer for my granny who lives next to the co-op, I need to be nearer than Barthampton. So unless there's a personal need that makes the connection, I'm 98% sure we can't have this condition.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jackson. Anybody else like to contribute to the debate? Otherwise I'll move to a vote on... No? So the motion we have on the table is to support the officer's recommendation to delegate to permit as described, proposed by Councillor Hounsell and seconded by Councillor Davis. All those in favour? 8. And against? 2. And that's everybody, so that motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks to the officer. Okay, we'll just crack on with the rest of the agenda because we've got no more items to debate. Appeals report. Any questions or comments on the appeals report from anyone? Otherwise, the committee is asked to note the contents of the report. Same for quarterly performance report. Any questions or comments? Otherwise, again, could the committee please note? Thank you. So the date of the next meeting is Wednesday the 7th of June. This is the last meeting of this administration, so as Chair I'd just like to say thank you to, first of all the officers, Planning, Highways, Legal, IT, Democratic Services, all fantastic officers, very professional. Their support has been invaluable, and speaking of professionalism, my committee, thank you all very much. We've worked well together, and special thank you to my Vice Chair, Councillor Davis. Some of you will be back, I won't, I'm not standing again, so good luck. Councillor Hounsell?
I remember at the last meeting, Councillor Crossley thought that was the final meeting and was eager to thank you for being the chair. Councillor Crossley's not here today. I would just like to take the opportunity on behalf of all of us to thank you for your work as chair, which has been really excellent. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Councillor Davis, who's been equally a brilliant vice chair, and the officers as well, and the rest of the committee. I believe Councillor Hodge has something to find very quickly. So.
Goodness. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. That's lovely. You're very kind, and I hereby close the meeting. Good luck, everybody, in a couple of weeks.